This is the fair use notice. The material in this video is provided solely for educational and informational purposes. It may contain copyrighted material, the use of which has not specifically been authorized by the copyright owner. Infringement of copyright is not intended. The material is made available to help educate people about health-related issues, and it is believed that this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Title 17, Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Law. The material is distributed without profit to those who would like to use such material for research and educational purposes. A lot of people don't believe Rick Simpson's story because they say if someone had cured cancer with THC, our healthcare industry would not withhold that information. In fact, here's a quote from Dr. West, Grace President, CEO, and Faculty Administrator at cancergrace.org forums, referring to the phoenixtears.ca website. So here's Cancer Grace forums. This right here, that's Dr. West, and this is his statement. I wouldn't really call that link a balanced assessment nor a careful, unbiased perspective, since it seems to me that he's invoking a collusion of just about everyone who doesn't accept hemp oil as being a tremendously favorable treatment. I personally doubt that a miraculous treatment for cancer could remain completely unknown and unheard of by so many people. So would the healthcare industry really want the world to know about a cure for cancer, especially one so affordable?
A huge loss for Pfizer, the largest healthcare fraud settlement in the history of the Department of Justice. The government was building a case against Pfizer for fraudulently marketing a drug that had raked in hundreds of millions of dollars in profits, a painkiller called Bextra. Pfizer aggressively marketed it for uses and in doses not approved by the FDA.
Alright, sounds like a really overgrown drug dealer to me. I'm going to show you a few clips here, all of the same newscast. I encourage you to watch the full video. Even this newscast doesn't have all the information on the murderous Bextra scam brought to you by Pfizer.
In 2001, when the FDA approved Bextra, but only for limited use and only for menstrual cramps and arthritis. Even so, Pfizer sales reps promoted it illegally for surgical pain in higher doses, uses the FDA had rejected due to safety concerns. Doctors responded. Instead of prescribing, say, ibuprofen at pennies a pill, they prescribed Bextra at nearly $3 a pill.
Next clip.
Did the sales rep know what they were doing was illegal?
They said that the district manager approved it. They think it might not be legal, but if they don't make their numbers, they're not going to keep their job anyway.
It brought Pfizer nearly $1 billion in profits, and it cost us all because Medicare, Medicaid, and our private insurance picked up much of the tab.
Approval process.
Even though prosecutors said the illegal conduct was tolerated and encouraged by sales managers across the country, Pfizer escaped the ultimate punishment. Just as giant banks on Wall Street were considered too big to fail, Pfizer was considered too big to nail. Why? Because a company convicted of major fraud would automatically be kicked out of Medicare and Medicaid. Pfizer would no longer be allowed to bill any federal health programs for any of its products. It would be a corporate death sentence.
As I said, there is so much to this story. I'm trying to keep it short and only show you highlights. Plus, this isn't my video. To watch the full video, please go to the link that will be provided at the bottom. And one of the things that they're talking about between the last clip and this next one, they're talking if Pfizer failed, that the patients would be left without medicine. What they fail to mention is that every other major pharmaceutical on earth could make these same drugs. When you go to the pharmacy and you get your $4 prescription, it's the same drug, different name. That's good.
Since shutting down Pfizer was unthinkable, Pfizer and the feds cut a deal. And here's how they did it. Pfizer, located here in New York, owns a company named Pharmacia Corporation, which owns another company called Pharmacia and Upjohn LLC, which owns Pharmacia and Upjohn Company LLC, which in turn owns Pharmacia and Upjohn Company Incorporated. And what does Pharmacia and Upjohn Company Incorporated do? Nothing. It's a shell created to be a legal shield for Pfizer. In other words, if Pfizer was at risk of being convicted, the shell company would take the hit. Think of it as the great-great-grandson of the parent company. Birthday, March 27, 2007. Just in time to plead guilty in a kickback case against a company Pfizer had acquired a few years earlier. With that conviction, Pharmacia and Upjohn Company Incorporated, which had never sold so much as a single pill, was excluded from Medicare. 2 years later, when Pfizer was in trouble with Bextra, Pharmacia and Upjohn Company Incorporated, the shell company, stepped up again and pleaded guilty. It was like having an imaginary friend, an imaginary bad guy, to take the rap. And Pfizer, too big to nail, is still doing business with the federal government.
So, Drew, what does Pfizer have to say about all this?
Anderson, nothing on camera. After a lot of back and forth, we got a phone conversation with the company's chief compliance officer. He told us, look, Pfizer takes full responsibility for illegally promoting Bextra, and to prevent it from happening again, here's what Pfizer said it's done. It set up a leading-edge system. It monitors sales reps, tracking prescription sales and proactively looking for signs that its people are illegally promoting these drugs.
So is Pfizer doing this voluntarily?
No, not all voluntary. Pfizer, they had to sign what's called a corporate integrity agreement with the Department of Health and Human Services. Basically, the executives at Pfizer have to sign on the dotted line to say that their company is going to comply with the law.
But
Okay, that's one bad apple. Surely our healthcare industry has my best interests at heart. Now, I'm not going to give up on the healthcare industry because of one profit-addicted company that got way too big to have to bother with people's well-being anymore.
Virus. They took the product off the market in the U.S. and then they dumped it in France, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The medicine's called Factorate. It was an injection medicine that was used for hemophiliacs, mostly children. Children had been born with an incurable disease.
Hold on, Mike. So hold on. So you're telling me that Bayer knew that this drug was infected with the AIDS virus. They yanked it from the market in America, and then they dumped it in markets overseas?
They had to figure out a way, Joe, to make a profit on a product that they could not sell in America. So they made a huge...
I don't know about you, but I think this is exciting. This is like playing the lottery. You never know which drug is going to be the winner. I've won a raffle before. This could be it, baby. We could win HIV.
I think HIV is a bad thing.
No. Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Well then, that's just horrifying. Stop it. Not to mention the side effects of all these drugs upon drugs upon drugs that they just keep pumping out, most of which are more dangerous than what the drug is prescribed for in the first place. Talk about side effects. Bayer just made it abundantly clear that children's lives are just a minor side effect of profit. I think it's disgusting that not only were these businesses allowed to continue doing business, but that we, the people of the world, continue doing business with scum like that. Which brings us to another option, the Rick Simpson hemp oil option. We're flipping through a High Times magazine and come across an article on Rick Simpson, and it's saying these absurd things that a man has cured cancer with THC and cannabinoids. Then it went on to say that this same man was facing 20 years in prison. So I started getting newspapers and looking around for more information on this Rick Simpson guy who's curing cancer. I mean, this has got to be in all the big news, right? But there's nothing. It's nowhere. I looked on all the popular news network websites. I did searches on these websites. There's nothing. Then I ran across Run from the Cure on YouTube, hosted by Paula Gloria. By this time, I was already not expecting anything earth-shattering, because if they had really stumbled onto something, then it would have been in the news, right?